They say the smallest things hurt the most. A glance, a whisper, a slammed door you weren't supposed to hear. But nothing stings like being told you're not fit to hold your own granddaughter. Not because you're sick, not because you've done anything wrong, just because someone decided you're too much. My name is Virginia Taylor. I'm 74 years old and I've raised 3 children, mostly alone after my husband Harold passed away 22 years ago. I've weathered grief, scrubbed floors until my knees ache, held hands in hospital rooms, put dinner on the table through layoffs, storms and scraped up knees. But nothing could have prepared me for the words I heard that day at the nursery door. It was a Saturday, sunny, peaceful. Or so I thought. I'd come to visit the baby, Emma. My first granddaughter. My son David and his wife, Amanda, had just come home from the hospital a few weeks ago. I'd offered to stay a while, help around the house, maybe cook meals so Amanda could rest. She smiled politely, said, "That's sweet, but we've got it." I didn't push, but I still dropped off casseroles, picked up laundry, held the baby when Amanda handed her to me, all smiles and sunshine, until she wasn't. That day I knocked gently on the nursery door. The baby was crying softly. Amanda was inside. I heard her voice first. "David, I just don't feel comfortable with her around Emma all the time." My heart sank. I froze. "She's always hovering," Amanda continued. "And it's like she doesn't know when to back off. I don't want her holding Emma so much. She smells like mothballs and old lipstick." David murmured something I couldn't hear. Then Amanda said, "She had her time with her kids. This is my turn now." I didn't knock again. I didn't step forward. I turned and walked down the hall, my shoes silent against the hardwood. I left the house before they knew I'd come. That was the moment something broke. Quietly, like a string snapping inside my chest. I didn't speak to anyone that evening, just sat at my kitchen table, staring at the casserole I'd meant to drop off. I looked around my little house, the one Harold and I built from the ground up. Every photo on the wall was a story. Every dent in the floor was a memory. There was one of David in his Little League uniform, missing a front tooth, glove bigger than his head. One of Amanda at their wedding, standing next to me in a gown she said she adored, but later complained was too old-fashioned. I'd paid for that gown too. I kept asking myself, when did I become the problem? When did I go from beloved mother to tolerated inconvenience? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat down and wrote. Not a long letter, not at first, just thoughts, feelings I'd never spoken aloud, memories Amanda didn't know, pain I'd never let David see. It wasn't a revenge letter. It was a reminder of who I was, who I still am. The next day, I got a message from David. "Hey Mom, everything okay? We noticed you didn't come in yesterday." I didn't reply. He followed up with a photo of Emma, cheeks round and pink, with a caption, "She misses her grandma." That one made me cry. But still, I didn't reply, because I knew that message wasn't about Emma. It was about guilt, and they didn't feel nearly enough of it yet. That week, I went quiet, didn't visit, didn't call. I baked a batch of cinnamon rolls and dropped them at the neighbors. Instead, spent hours in the garden, pruning the roses. Harold planted the year we got engaged. Even repainted the old rocking chair on the porch, the one where David used to sit with a popsicle in one hand and a toy truck in the other. The silence must have gotten to them. On Thursday, Amanda called. I didn't answer. She texted, "Hi Virginia, just checking in. We haven't seen you around. Hope everything's okay. Let us know if you need anything." I laughed bitterly. They noticed I was gone, but they didn't ask why. I went to the attic that night, pulled out an old wooden box Harold had made me for our 25th. Inside were old letters, yellowed cards, baby shoes, lockets, my life in keepsakes. I pulled out one picture in particular, Amanda and me, from the day Emma was born. I was holding the baby. Amanda had just woken from surgery. She was tired, but smiling. So was I. And then I remembered what she said just days later. She can't be around the baby. She's too much, it echoed in my mind. Too much, too loud, too present, too loving. I'd always believed that being too much was better than not being enough. But maybe to Amanda, love with no limits felt like intrusion. Well, if they wanted distance, they'd get it. The letter began that night. I didn't finish it all at once. I let it grow slowly, over days, a paragraph here, a sentence there, some parts angry, some parts aching. It wasn't just a goodbye, it was a confession, a final act of truth. By Sunday it was done. 3 pages, handwritten, signed in ink. I sealed it in an envelope and taped the house key to the back, the same key Amanda once said they'd hold on to, just in case. I didn't mail it. I didn't knock. I slipped it through their front door slot. Just after dawn. By the time they found it, I was already gone. Back home, I brewed myself tea and sat on the porch as the sun rose. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. Because sometimes the loudest thing a person can do is walk away in silence. And Amanda, she was about to read a letter she'd never forget. I half expected a phone call by noon. Maybe a text, a knock at the door. But none came. That Sunday passed like any other, quiet, slow, a little lonely. But I didn't check my phone every 5 minutes like I might have a week earlier. I didn't pace the floor wondering what they were thinking. I'd said what I needed to say in the letter. And once you put it on paper, you stop rehearsing it in your head. Still, I'll admit, I hoped for a reaction. Some part of me wanted Amanda to cry. For David to finally see me again. Not as someone to text when they needed a babysitter or a check, but as a person who once held their whole world together. Instead, nothing. It wasn't until Tuesday morning that I got the call. I was watering the violets by the window when my phone rang. David. For a second I stared at it. I nearly let it go to voicemail. But something in me, maybe the mother part, picked it up anyway. Mom, he said. Just that, a single word, but I could hear the tension in his voice. David, I replied as even as I could manage. Did you really leave that letter? I did, I said calmly. And I meant every word. There was a pause. I imagined him rubbing his forehead, pacing, doing that thing where he bites his lip like he used to when he forgot a school assignment. Amanda was really upset. I imagined she would be. She said you made her out to be the villain. I didn't raise my voice. David, she told you I shouldn't be around my granddaughter. That I'm too much. Do you think I imagined that? Another silence. I didn't know she felt that way, he said quietly. She said it was about boundaries. I laughed once, dry. She doesn't want boundaries, she wants erasure. Mom, no, I cut in gently. Let me finish. I sat down at the table, hand still wet from the violet. You know what it feels like to watch your own son stand there and let his wife call you a problem, like I'm some obligation to manage. His voice cracked a little. I never meant to make you feel that way. But you did, and you never stopped it. He didn't argue, didn't deny, and that was the first honest moment we'd had in years. The rest of the week I stayed quiet again, but not in the same way. This wasn't the silence of sadness, it was the silence of rest. I cleaned out my closets, tossed old receipts I didn't need, Finally fixed that broken cabinet hinge in the laundry room. For the first time in months, I started sleeping through the night. I didn't realize how tense I'd been, how on edge I felt, every time Amanda texted with a favor until I finally said no, or rather, said nothing at all. Friday came. I was expecting another quiet day when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Amanda. Not David. Not both of them. Just her. She looked tired. Not mascara smudge dramatic, but worn out. Hair tied back, eyes puffy. She was holding something in her hand. "I read your letter," she said. I nodded, waiting. "I guess I didn't realize how deep it went for you." I didn't answer. She swallowed. "I didn't mean to make you feel like you were just there for convenience." I tilted my head. "But you did." She didn't argue. Instead, she held out the thing in her hand. The key, the one I'd taped to the back of the envelope. "I thought you should have this back." I took it slowly. "Why?" "I don't know," she said, shifting her weight. "Maybe because I realized I don't want Emma to grow up without knowing who you are. Who you really are." Now that made my chest ache. Because I'd been worried about that too. "I didn't write that letter to hurt you, Amanda," I said softly. "I wrote it because I was hurt, and no one was listening when I said it out loud." She looked down. "I didn't want my daughter growing up thinking I was just a babysitter. I wanted her to know that I was the woman who once held her father's hand through every broken bone, who worked double shifts so he could go to college, who made Christmas magical even when we barely had heat." Amanda's eyes shimmered. "I get it," she whispered. "I really do." I nodded. "Do you?" She hesitated, then said something I never expected. "I grew up without my grandparents. They passed before I was old enough to remember. I guess I didn't know how to include you. Not the right way." Now that was honest. We stood in silence for a minute. The wind blew softly, and I heard the jingle of the wind chimes. Harold had hung years ago. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. I looked past her at the car idling in the driveway. Emma was in the back seat, her little head bobbing softly as she slept. I smiled. "Not today, but soon." She nodded, eyes filled with something new. Respect, maybe. That evening I called Carol, my neighbor and oldest friend. "Told you writing the letter was the way to go," she said with a laugh. "I didn't do it to guilt trip them," I replied. "I know, that's what made it powerful." Before bed I sat down with a fresh piece of paper. Not a letter this time. A note for myself. Things I'd do differently. Speak up sooner. Say no when I feel like it. Let silence speak when needed. Never let anyone make me feel like less than a mother again. At the bottom I wrote, "Love is not quiet, but it shouldn't have to scream to be heard." And for the first time in months, I knew they'd heard me. Really heard me. Not because I yelled, but because I finally stopped explaining myself. Saturday morning came with sunlight, slanting through the curtains, soft and golden, the way it always looked in the early days of fall. It was the kind of light Harold used to call front porch coffee weather. I made myself a cup and walked out to the porch just like we used to, blanket over my knees, mug in hand and quiet all around. Except this time, the quiet wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. No Amanda. No David. No baby Emma wailing in the background while they scrambled to get to brunch or some work event. No text asking if I could do just this one favor. And yet, I missed them. Not the chaos. Not the way they'd come to take me for granted. But the girl. Emma, her tiny fingers wrapping around mine. The way her laugh filled the kitchen. When I made faces during diaper changes. She'd called me Mimi once. They all acted like I was just the help. But Emma had looked at me like I was magic, and that was what I wasn't ready to lose. Later that afternoon, I went digging through the photo boxes in the hallway closet. You know the ones. Every family's got 'em. Not digital, not curated on some Instagram profile with filters and hashtags, just old-fashioned, thumb-smudged prints in shoeboxes, labeled with years and birthdays and school events. There was one box marked David. From day one. I pulled it out and set it gently on the table. Inside, photos of him in the hospital swaddled like a burrito, his first toothless grin, a drawing he did of our family in kindergarten, me with a giant sun behind my head holding his hand, father gone, just us two. I flipped through shot after shot, me pushing him on swings, holding his hand at the zoo, standing behind him at his high school graduation, my hair done up even though I'd cried the whole morning before. And not once, not in any of those photos, was I just the babysitter. That night, I gathered a handful of the pictures and put them in an old album, just for me, my own little proof of presence. The love they'd forgotten, I had receipts. Sunday came and went without another visit or call, and that was okay, because I was remembering who I was before all the sacrifice, and I needed that more than their apology. On Monday, something unexpected happened. The mailman, Larry, knocked on the door instead of slipping letters through the box. I opened it, puzzled. "Got a package for you," he said, handing over a square cardboard box. "Looks like it came from a photo lab." I thanked him, closed the door, and opened it on the kitchen table. Inside, a framed photo of me and baby Emma. Me holding her at the park last spring. I remembered that day clearly. Amanda had taken the photo on her phone. It had been warm. Emma had her little sun hat on, and I'd been laughing, tossing her in the air. And underneath the frame was a sticky note. It just said, "She asked to see Mimi this morning. Thought this belonged with you." For a long time, I just sat there, staring at it. Not crying, not even smiling, just breathing. Amanda had remembered. Emma hadn't forgotten. That evening, I did something bold. I drove over to their house. It had been a while. The porch was decorated with pumpkins and cornstalks. Their golden retriever barked once as I stepped up to the door, but then wagged his tail like he still remembered me sneaking him ham when no one was looking. Amanda opened the door. She was surprised, but she didn't look angry. Just a little nervous. "I didn't expect you," she said. "I know," I replied, holding the frame. "But I wanted to say thank you." She stepped aside and let me in. David wasn't home. Just her and Emma, who was in the living room, busy tearing pages out of a magazine like it was her job. When she saw me, her face lit up. "Mimi," she squealed. That sound. It undid something in me. I knelt down, and she toddled over, arms out. We hugged for a long minute. Amanda didn't interrupt, didn't comment. She just let it happen. Afterward, we sat in the kitchen. Emma colored at the table. Amanda poured us both tea. "I know it doesn't fix everything," she said, "but I want you to know, I've been thinking about what you said. What you wrote." I nodded. "And," she bit her lip, "you're right, I treated you like backup. And that's not who you are. You're her grandmother. Your family." That word. Family. She finally said it like it included me again. We didn't solve every issue that day. There were still things to discuss. Boundaries, respect, schedules. But something had changed. Amanda had stopped seeing me as background noise and started seeing me as someone worth hearing. When I got home that night, I put the photo of Emma and me on the mantel, right next to Harold's old pipe and a little porcelain angel David made in second grade. That house, it had once been full of noise and clatter and chaos. But that night, it felt full of meaning. I sat down at the table again, pulled out my journal. I wrote, "Sometimes people forget who you are because you've made their lives too easy. But love isn't a job, and being family isn't a favor." Then I added, "The next time they ask who I am, I'll show them the pictures, and the letters, and the little girl who calls me Mimi." I closed the journal, then picked up the phone. I had a story to tell Carol, and this time it had hope in the middle of it. I didn't expect Amanda to call so soon, but 2 days later, around 6 p.m., the phone rang. Her voice on the other end was softer than usual. "Hey, Mom," she said. "Do you think you could come by Saturday just for a couple hours?" I paused. It wasn't the words that made me hesitate. It was the tone, like she was offering me a teaspoon of water after leaving me in the desert. Polite, careful, still laced with control. "I'll think about it," I said, and I meant that. I didn't want to leap back into things just because the wind had shifted. I needed to know it was real, that they saw me as more than just a set of hands with nothing better to do. Saturday morning arrived crisp and chilly. I made myself oatmeal and sat at the window watching leaves fall like whispers from the trees. Emma's laugh echoed in my memory, but so did Amanda's voice saying, "You're not really helping, Mom. You're just here." I had a choice to make, so I packed a small bag. Nothing major, just a book, a soft cardigan for Emma, and a copy of the letter I had written. The one she never let me finish reading out loud. I tucked it into my purse, just in case I needed it again. When I arrived, Amanda opened the door wearing her "everything's fine" smile. David was in the background, distracted by his phone. Emma came bounding up to me with crayon-covered hands and flung her arms around my knees. "Mimi," she chirped. That part always felt like home. I followed Amanda into the kitchen, where the scent of cinnamon filled the air. There was a tray of muffins on the counter, and 2 mugs waiting. I noticed the second mug was one of mine, the chipped floral one I used to use when I lived there. It was a small gesture, but I clocked it. She poured coffee without asking. "We thought maybe you could take Emma for a walk to the park today, just for an hour or two. She's been asking." I stirred my coffee. "Sure, I'd like that." Amanda nodded. But then came the words I knew were waiting. "And if you could just keep things low-key. No sweets, no big stories." We're trying to be more intentional about her stimulation. Her voice had that tight professional edge, the kind people use when they've been to too many parenting seminars and forget that love doesn't come with PowerPoint slides. "I understand," I said, setting my mug down. "But can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said. "Have you talked to her about why I wasn't around the past few weeks?" Amanda blinked. "She's 3, Mom. I know. But she asked. She said she missed me." Amanda sighed and leaned on the counter. "We told her you were taking a little break, that you needed time." I nodded slowly. "And was that for her sake, or yours?" That stopped her. "I'm not trying to pick a fight," I continued. "But I think we both know this wasn't about boundaries. It was about control." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, you didn't like that I had opinions, or that I didn't jump when you snapped. So instead of talking to me like a person, you sidelined me." She stood straighter. "That's not fair. I never wanted you to feel. You told me I couldn't be around the baby unsupervised. That's not setting a boundary. That's punishment dressed up in nice words." The room went quiet. Even the coffee maker let out a soft hiss, as if it were holding its breath. "I'm her grandmother," I said. "Not a hired sitter, not a convenience. And I know what I've done for this family." Amanda's voice cracked a little. "It wasn't supposed to feel like this, but it does," I said gently. "And if we're going to move forward, it has to be honest." We didn't speak for a long moment. Then Emma came toddling in with her shoes on the wrong feet and her jacket half zipped. "Mimi, we go now?" she asked brightly. I smiled down at her. "Yes, baby." Let's go. At the park, she chased squirrels and kicked leaves and told me all about the giant bird she said lived behind the slide. I listened to every word, but I was also thinking about Amanda, about how sometimes your own child doesn't know how to love you once you stop making their lives easier. How motherhood becomes something people expect you to outgrow once they become parents. But we don't stop being mothers, or grandmothers, or people. When we got back, David was the one who opened the door. He looked sheepish. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Hey, David." He cleared his throat. "Amanda told me you had a talk. I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner." "I should've. You didn't deserve to be pushed away like that." I looked at him, my son who once clung to my legs when he was scared of thunder, who once begged me to stay when I had to work night shifts. "I'm still here," I said softly. "But not at any cost." He nodded. "I get that." That night, I left them a little envelope on the counter before I went home. Inside was the full letter. Not a scolding, not a guilt trip. Just a reminder of the nights I rocked David to sleep alone. Of the time I sold my wedding ring to cover his tuition. Of the meals I made when Amanda was on bed rest. Of the love that has no name other than showing up. At the bottom I wrote, "This isn't me asking to be needed. It's me asking to be respected." When I got home, the house felt heavy and quiet again. But this time I didn't feel invisible in it. I felt solid, whole. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone else to decide my worth. The next morning, I didn't check my phone right away. I knew if Amanda had read the letter, she'd either be quiet or furious. Either way, I didn't want to sit by waiting for her reaction like a nervous teenager. I went about my morning routine instead. Made my tea, watered the ferns by the kitchen window, took my walk around the block. By the time I returned, my phone had 3 missed calls from Amanda. 1 voicemail. No text. Typical. Always more comfortable with voice than words on a screen where things could be read over and over and over again. I sat down and pressed play. Her voice was tight, but not angry. "Hi, Mom. I read your letter. It was a lot. I need to talk. Not over the phone. Can we meet later? I'll make lunch. Just us." Just us. That part made my heart pinch. Not because I was excited, but because I hadn't heard her say that in a long time. When I got there, the house was quiet. Emma was at daycare. David was out. Amanda stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like tomato soup. And there was grilled cheese warming in the oven. I hadn't had that combo since David was 10. She didn't say much when she opened the door. Just a quiet, "Come in." I took a seat at the kitchen island, and for a while we just moved in silence. Her back to me, my eyes watching the same spot on the counter where I once rolled cookie dough with Emma last Christmas. Finally, she sat down across from me with a sigh. "You really remembered all that?" she asked. "The things you wrote." I smiled faintly. "Mothers don't forget. We just stop reminding." She gave a bitter little laugh. "Guess that's the difference. I feel like I forget everything lately. Emma's school forms, doctor appointments, what day it is." I let the silence do its work. After a moment, she looked up. "I was unfair. I know that now. I thought I was setting healthy boundaries. But I wasn't. I was pushing you out." I stayed quiet. I was overwhelmed. "And David, he just shut down when I brought it up. So it was easier to act like you were the problem. Easier than facing how much I was failing." That word hung heavy in the room. Failing. It's a word mothers use on themselves like knives. "You're not failing," I said. "You're flailing. And that's different." She blinked, caught off guard. "Every mother flails," I continued. We do our best. We make mistakes. We course correct. What matters is that we stop hurting the people who love us when we're scared. Amanda looked down at her hands. You didn't deserve that. You've done more for us than anyone ever has. I forgot that. Maybe, I said. But I think you stopped seeing me. I was just there. Like furniture, she whispered. Yes, I nodded. Like furniture that made dinner and cleaned dishes and got dismissed whenever it had an opinion. Her eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly. I was so tired of being told what to do. By doctors, by books, by friends. I guess I took it out on you. I reached across the counter and put my hand on hers. I don't need to be the boss, Amanda. I just need to be treated like someone who matters. She nodded slowly. You do, you always have. We ate lunch together in silence after that. Not awkward. Just soft, like two people rebuilding something that had once been strong. But maybe too quiet for too long. Before I left, Amanda walked me to the front door. Mom? She asked as I grabbed my purse. Do you want to pick up Emma from daycare with me tomorrow? I looked at her. She wasn't offering out of guilt. She was offering from a place of effort. I'd love to, I said. She smiled. She'll be so happy. I gave her a gentle hug, one she didn't pull away from too quickly this time. That night, I sat on my front porch with a blanket around my legs and a cup of tea in my hands. The crickets chirped. A few porch lights flickered on across the street. I thought about all the times I'd said nothing to keep the peace, and how sometimes peace needs to be disturbed in order to be rebuilt. The next afternoon, I rode with Amanda to pick up Emma. On the drive, she talked about sleep regressions and work stress and how she was thinking of going back to school. I listened without trying to fix. Just listen. When we got there, Emma came running out with a picture she'd drawn. It was of 3 stick figures. One small, one medium, one with curly white hair. Amanda smiled. Is that us? Emma nodded proudly. It's me, Mommy, and Mimi. I looked at Amanda. She looked back at me. That moment said everything. Later that night, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a short note and attached a copy of the letter I'd written to Amanda. Then I sent it to my old friend Rose, who volunteers with a local senior support group. I asked if they ever needed material for their monthly newsletter. Her reply came within an hour. Margaret, this is beautiful. Would you be willing to let us publish it? I think a lot of grandmothers need to read this. I sat there staring at her words for a long time. Not because I was unsure, but because I finally realized something. I wasn't just Emma's grandmother. I wasn't just Amanda's mother. I was still a woman with a voice, and this time, I wasn't going to let anyone quiet it. The following week brought something unexpected. Peace. Not the loud kind, not the showy kind, but that quiet steadiness that settles into your bones when tension finally leaves a room. Amanda had begun texting me in the mornings. Little things like, Emma wants to wear her princess shoes again. Or guess who spilled milk all over the dog, and it made me smile. I was still cautious though. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without anger. On Wednesday, Amanda invited me to dinner. Not as a babysitter. Not as a helper. As a guest. When I arrived, the table was already set. Real plates, cloth napkins, even a little vase of carnations. David greeted me with a smile I hadn't seen in months. Not that fake one either. This one reached his eyes. Emma ran to me immediately. Mimi, you came. I told you I would, sweetheart. She grabbed my hand and dragged me to the seat next to hers. proudly pointing to the little drawing she'd taped onto the backrest. A flower and the word love scribbled in pink crayon. David poured the wine while Amanda stirred a pot of pasta. It wasn't perfect, but it was something better. It was effort. After dinner, while David and Emma were building a pillow fort in the living room, Amanda sat beside me at the table. "You've been quiet," she said. I smiled. "Just listening and watching." She nodded slowly, then sighed. "I told my friend Carrie about what happened," she said. "About the letter. And what I said to you before." I raised an eyebrow. Amanda didn't usually tell her friends about family matters. She said, "It sounded like I was burned out, that I'd started to treat everyone around me like they were either a threat or a burden." I stayed quiet, let her process her own truth. "I think I was," she admitted. "Burned out, but I didn't know how to say that without sounding like a failure. So instead I tried to control everything." I reached over and gently squeezed her hand. "Being tired doesn't make you a failure, Amanda. Pretending you're not tired does." She gave a quiet laugh. "Wish someone had told me that sooner." "I did. You just weren't ready to hear it." The next morning, I got a call from Rose, the friend who helped with the senior support group. She sounded excited. "Margaret," she said, "your piece is going into the next issue of the newsletter, but we've had more requests than usual. Would you consider reading it aloud for a podcast we're starting?" My stomach flipped. "Me? On a podcast?" She laughed. "Why not? Your voice is steady, and your story is powerful. I think it'll resonate." I hesitated. Speaking publicly wasn't something I did, not anymore. But then I thought about how easy it had been for Amanda to silence me with a single sentence. "You can't be around the baby," and how I'd swallowed my words for years. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it." The podcast recording took place the following Monday. It was just a little room in the back of a library, with some sound panels and a microphone. Rose was there, and a young volunteer named Elijah, who handled the equipment. "You'll just read from the page," he explained, adjusting the mic to my height. "Take your time. Pause where you need to, no pressure." I sat down, unfolded the paper copy of my letter, and began to read. My voice shook at first, just a little, but as I continued, I felt something settle in. Strength, presence, power. Not the kind that yells, the kind that knows what it's worth. When I finished, Elijah took off his headphones and said softly, "That was incredible." Rose was wiping her eye. "Margaret, that needs to be heard by every grandmother I know." 2 weeks later, the episode aired. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few kind words, maybe one or two people reaching out. But I underestimated the quiet army of women out there. Women who'd also been told they were just babysitting, or too much, or in the way. The emails started trickling in. Then the messages, women thanking me for saying what they'd never been able to say. Some estranged from their children, some still swallowing their pain to keep the peace. But most of them, they weren't asking for sympathy. They were asking what I had done next. So I told them. I set boundaries. I stayed calm. And when that didn't work, I walked away, but not without leaving the truth behind. Amanda called me later that week. "Mom," she said, "people are tagging me in your podcast on Facebook." I winced. "Oh? Yeah, it's making waves." There was a pause. "I'm not mad," she added. "It's strange hearing our life through someone else's ears. But I get it. And honestly, I'm proud of you." That surprised me. "I didn't use your name," I said. "I know, but even if you had, I deserved it." 3 days later, Amanda asked me to help her write her own letter. Not for the public, not for the podcast, but for herself. "I want Emma to have something in writing," she said. "One day when she's older, I want her to know that even when I got things wrong, I tried to make them right." I sat beside her on the couch while she typed. One sentence at a time, not perfect, but real, just like her. That evening, I lit a candle in my bedroom and opened a fresh journal. At the top of the page, I wrote, "For Emma," not because I expected to be gone soon, but because words, real words, can outlive even the longest silences. And I wasn't going to let mine go unwritten again. It was a slow Thursday afternoon when Amanda showed up unannounced. She had Emma with her, dressed in sparkly sneakers and a backpack shaped like a ladybug. "Mimi," Emma chirped as soon as I opened the door, flinging herself at my waist. I knelt to hug her tightly. "What brings you two by?" Amanda gave a soft smile. "She wanted to show you her memory shelf." I blinked. "Her what?" Emma was already tugging at her mom's arm, urging her toward the car. Amanda laughed and said, "We made something together. You have to see it." At their house, Emma led me straight to her room. On the far wall, above her toy box, was a little wooden shelf, painted unevenly with pastel brushstrokes and stickers shaped like hearts and stars. Each item on it had a tiny note card beneath it. There was a picture of me and her at the park, labeled "Me and Mimi when I was 3, a plastic bracelet I'd given her, Mimi's sparkly gift, a drawing she had done of me in purple glasses, Mimi reading stories. The last item was a folded copy of a crayon-scribbled letter she had written just that week. Amanda had translated the note at the bottom. "Mimi is kind. She loves me. I want to be like her." I stood in silence, my hand on my heart. Amanda watched from the doorway. "I told her you were more than just a helper," she said. "I told her you were part of her story." Later that evening, while Emma was playing with her dolls in the living room, Amanda poured 2 cups of tea and sat across from me at the kitchen table. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy," she said. I nodded. "It's a word that gets heavier with time." She smiled faintly. "I don't want Emma to remember me as someone who pushed people away, or someone who didn't listen." I took a sip of my tea. "And what do you think she'll remember?" "That I learned," Amanda said. "Maybe not fast enough, but I learned." That answer settled in my chest like warmth, like peace. That weekend, we took Emma to the community fair. It was small. Some food stalls, a bouncy house, and a tiny petting zoo. But for Emma, it was magic. She got her face painted like a butterfly, ran circles around the pie stand, and made friends with a baby goat she named Button. While David was busy holding their spot in the corn dog line, Amanda and I sat on a bench in the shade. "I've been meaning to ask," she said. "What are you going to do with all your letters?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Well, the one you left us, the one on the podcast, the journal you're keeping for Emma." I hadn't really thought about it like that. I wasn't writing them as a collection. I was writing them as survival. Amanda continued. "I think other women should read them. Maybe you should publish them." I laughed. "Me? Publish something? Why not? You've already touched people." I waved my hand. "That was one podcast episode." She shook her head. "No, Mom. That was the beginning of something." A few days later, I found myself looking at a blank document on my computer. At the top I typed letters they weren't ready for. Then I sat back and stared at it. I didn't know if it would ever become a book, or a pamphlet, or anything more than a folder on my desktop, but it was a start, a place to hold every version of myself that had ever been silenced. Emma came over the next day, just the two of us. Amanda had a dental appointment, and she didn't want to bring Emma along. I could tell she was nervous about asking. But she did it anyway. "I'd be honored to watch her," I said. And I meant it. Emma and I made oatmeal cookies, built a pillow fort that nearly caved in, and watched an old cartoon movie on the couch, with popcorn everywhere. Before she left, she gave me a drawing she'd made while I was cooking. It was the two of us, under a tree. I was holding a book. She was holding my hand. At the top, in her uneven little handwriting, it said Mimi is home. That night, I sat by the window with the drawing in my lap, the breeze slipping through the curtain and brushing against my cheek, like a memory. I thought about all the ways people say home, through actions, through silence, through rejection, through love. But this was the only kind I wanted. The kind drawn in crayon by a child who still believed the world was soft. I added the drawing to the journal, right after a new entry titled Healing Doesn't Need Permission. Because sometimes, the people who broke your heart also hand you the tools to rebuild it, one shaky word at a time. I didn't need to scream to be heard. I didn't need to fight to be remembered. I just needed to write the truth and leave it where someone I loved would one day find it. It was the first rainy morning of fall when I sat down at my desk and picked up my pen. Not the computer this time, not a podcast microphone or a journal, just paper, lined, unassuming. It felt right. I had one more letter to write, not to Amanda, not even to Emma, but to someone who once made me doubt my place in my own story. To myself, dear Margaret, you were never just the babysitter. You were the warmth in the room when no one said thank you. You were the soft voice when tempers flared. You were the only one who kept showing up, even when the door was barely open. You cried in silence. You held your tongue. You bent until your spirit started to splinter. And yet, you still made cookies. You still folded laundry. You still tucked in your granddaughter with stories of kindness. You endured the whispered judgments, the backhanded gratitude, the days they forgot you had a first name. But this is what I need you to know. You were never invisible. They simply didn't know how to see. And now you walk upright. Now you write it down. Now you leave the letter on the table when the words no longer fit in your throat. You were never meant to fade. You were meant to illuminate. Love. The version of you that finally spoke. I folded the letter and placed it inside a small blue envelope. I didn't label it, didn't plan to mail it. I just kept it in the drawer beneath my favorite pens. A reminder that the first person who needs to believe you matter is you. 1 week later, Emma's school had Grandparents' Day. Amanda asked if I wanted to come, this time with no hesitation in her voice. We already told the teacher you're her grandmother, she said, the real one. I blinked back a tear. I'd love that. When I walked into the classroom, Emma came running across the tile floor in socks that slipped. She flung her arms around me. My Mimi is here, she shouted to the whole class. And for a moment, every piece that had ever felt displaced clicked back into place. The teacher had set up an interview your grandparent activity. Emma asked me questions with a plastic microphone made of foam. What did you want to be when you grew up? She asked. I laughed. A teacher. She nodded seriously and wrote it down with her sparkly pencil. What makes you happy? She asked next. You, I said instantly. She giggled and leaned her head against my arm. What's your best memory? She asked, finally. I thought for a long moment, then smiled. This one. Afterward, Amanda took a photo of us. Emma was leaning into my side, her cheek against my shoulder, and my hand rested gently on her back. Later that night, Amanda sent me the picture. I printed it out and taped it to the inside cover of my journal, right next to the words healing is slow, but it leaves the strongest roots. Months passed. I started sharing more letters online, not just through that podcast host, but on my own terms, through a small blog Amanda helped me set up. It was simple. White background, black text. No ads, no noise, just letters. Some were to myself, some to women like me, some to the versions of our daughters that couldn't see us clearly yet. The blog grew slowly, quietly. But it grew. Comments began appearing. I thought I was the only one. Your story gave me courage to speak to my daughter again. I read this out loud to my granddaughter. We both cried. Thank you. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's just pain dressed up for company. But writing? Writing made the silence real. And then made it soft. One afternoon, Amanda came over while Emma was at a playdate. She was carrying something in her hands. I made you this, she said, a little shyly. It was a wooden box, handcrafted with smooth corners and a gold latch. When I opened it, I saw the letters, all of them. Printed, dated, folded neatly. My entire story. I thought you should have a physical copy, she said. For Emma someday, or just for you. I was speechless. This is my favorite version of you, she said softly. The one who tells the truth. I touched her hand. It's your favorite version of me because you finally let her speak. That night I added one last page to the journal. Let them mislabel you. Let them underestimate your voice. Just don't hand them the pen to write your ending. And then I wrote, the end. For now. Because there are always more letters. There are always more women who think they're alone. And there are always little girls who need to know what strength looks like when it's soft. Emma came for a sleepover the next weekend. She wore her unicorn pajamas, brushed her teeth without being asked, and climbed into bed with her bunny plushie tucked under her arm. As I turned out the light, she asked sleepily, Mimi, will you always be here? I tucked the covers up under her chin and kissed her forehead. Yes, sweetheart, I whispered, even when I'm not, because I knew now my voice wouldn't vanish. It lived in the letter, in the shelf above her toys, in the photos, in the softness she carried forward into the world. They had tried to erase me with silence, but I wrote back louder, and I left the letter where they'd never forget it.